just double check and make sure there's nobody else to admit. No, we're all here. Fantastic. So welcome everyone to the very first of the FebFast guest speakers. So I'm very, very excited and thrilled to have Liv Downing join us today. And Liv has over 25 years professional experience and is a renowned psychologist, mindfulness teacher, and the author of this beautiful book, You Are Loved, which I received as a present from one of the lovely participants. So thank you, Liv, for your beautiful book, and I'm sure you can talk about that later too. And Liv's expertise is around helping people really connect deeply with themselves and others through her psychology practice and using mindfulness as a powerful tool for navigating life's challenges. And she's really known for making mindfulness accessible and practical, which is what I love, and empowering us to find daily calm and clarity and connection, which is part of the alcohol-free journey. So as a meditation teacher, also Liv brings a really inspiring and calming presence, offering very simple and effective techniques to reduce stress and help us strengthen our resilience. So whether you're new to mindfulness or looking to deepen your practice, you've come to the right spot because we have an expert with us. So welcome, Liv, to the session, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Beck. It's an absolute privilege.
I'm so happy. So can we kick off by you sharing what inspired you to explore mindfulness and psychology as a career path?
Yeah, I would love to do that. I love talking a bit about my career, but before we start, I'm going to throw us all straight into a practice because
Great.
I think that I can give you all the theory and all the tips and all the ideas, but in order for us to really learn and understand about this work, we need to do it. So if you're happy to indulge me, Beck, and everybody here on the call, and those of you watching the recording, I'll just invite you to find a place that feels comfortable. So, you know, a position in your body where really the only thing that matters when we sit down to practice is that our spine is long. We might like to tuck our chin a little bit. You can do whatever you like with your hands. They can be resting on your lap or in your knees or in a mudra of your choice if that's part of your tradition. You're welcome to let the eyes close, but if you'd prefer to keep them open, that is completely fine. Just choosing a spot on the desk or the wall or the floor in front of you and just adopting a gentle gaze. And in this first time of practice together, you might notice just what's happening in the mind already. You know, the automatic thoughts that come flooding in around perhaps your preconceived ideas about what meditation is and what it isn't, whether you can or can't do it, whether you like it or don't like it. And my invitation is just to adopt the role of a curious observer. So just noticing the activity of the mind already in these first few moments. Almost as if this were the first time you'd noticed thinking. Wow, it's busy in there, hey? And that's okay, because the beauty of this work is not about clearing our mind. The beauty of this work is becoming empowered to watch our mind, to observe our mind, to deepen our own self-awareness and understanding. The peace comes all by itself. We can't make peace and calm happen. So now I'll invite you just to sense and feel into this miraculous body sitting here. This body, these trillions of cells working together. You might notice the feeling of the feet on the floor or the bed or however they're positioned. Just sensing and feeling into the sensations in the feet. So in this work, we are stepping beyond thinking. We're stepping into feeling, experiencing. So noticing the feet and then the lower legs, the knees, thighs, the pelvis, the hips, the belly, diaphragm, chest. Just noticing, not needing to fix or change anything. Perhaps for the first time today, or maybe for the first time in a while, allowing ourselves to become embodied, to land in this present moment, which is the only moment we have any power. The lower back, the middle of the back, the upper back, the shoulders, the arms and hands, the neck, the throat, the back of the head, the top of the head, and the face. Just noticing the brow and the eyes, the cheeks, the way the lips meet or are softly parted, the way the tongue's positioned in the mouth. And if the tongue happens to be at the top of the mouth, just letting it drop down to the base of the mouth, noticing perhaps the way the jaw unhinges with that simple action. And then, if you're happy to, I'd love to invite you just to notice the fact that you're breathing. There's no need to fix or change it or manage it. We're not taking deep breaths. Mindfulness is the gift of allowing us to be where and who we already are. What freedom comes with that? So just noticing your own breath. And then letting go of the breath and sensing and feeling once again into the body. And beginning at the very top of the head, letting your kind and curious attention trickle down over the face, the head, the neck, showering yourself with kindness, showering yourself with curiosity. What's here? Oh, look at this. Wow. Look at these shoulders, this chest, this upper back, middle of the back, lower back, diaphragm, belly, hips, arms and hands, thighs, lower legs, until once again the attention pulls at the feet. And as this brief grounding practice comes to an end, I'd love to just invite you to sense and feel into the human earth connection, the solidity of this connection with earth. We belong here. We are welcome here. We are worthy here. And then before closing the eyes, before opening the eyes, just take a moment to consider, what can you take with you from this brief practice? Because we don't meditate to become good at meditation. We meditate to show up more effectively, more wholly in our life. So what can you take with you? It might be a simple awareness of a pain in your back you hadn't noticed, or a softness in your chest, or a tingliness in your belly. Like, what can you take? Or the activity of the mind, the stories, the planning, the worrying. This is part of building our own wisdom. And then when you feel ready, just letting the eyes blink open and seeing if you can make that transition quite conscious. And when we do that, we build a bridge between our inner world and our outer world, which allows us to show up more authentically, more mindfully, if you like. So welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, Beck. So, okay. On to the question.
On to the question. I was just saying while I was on mute, that was very grounding and peaceful. Thank you for that.
My
Fantastic.
pleasure. My pleasure. So what change did you notice in that 5 or 6 minutes between when we first started and now?
Initially, my thoughts were racing about, what question am I going to ask,
Yep.
just stuff. And
Everything.
then I consciously, I think when you said start breathing, then I really got into my body and let that go.
Yeah.
And just felt really grounded, actually, and centered.
Yeah, look, I was about to say it's magic. Of course, it's not magic, it's neuroscience. I mean, we have the evidence of this, but it is incredible that we can carve out that experience, that island of sanity, in 5 or 6 minutes.
Absolutely.
If this was a drug and it could be patented, can you imagine the demand of, well, there are these drugs that can do that, but we can do it ourselves. We have our own little chemical cabinet in our brain and body, so we can create that felt sense of groundedness and presence.
Yeah, it's so important, that feeling, especially, for people in the alcohol free. The one thing is about that sense of wanting that peace and calm, which we used to get from the, glass of wine, for example. So now this is one of the techniques that we can use, and I often use just to sit down for 5 minutes and, really I've called it grounding, but it's meditation grounding as well. So
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, you're spot on, Beck. We often reach for a drink or a chocolate bar or a, social media scroll to get rid of discomfort, because we have this discomfort, this churning fear or anger or sadness. And if we can sit down and allow ourselves to hold the discomfort, to hold it with more wisdom and more kindness and more curiosity, it might not make it go away, but it will allow us to manage it more effectively, make more conscious choices.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, so in answer to your question, why am I doing what I'm doing?
Yes.
The journey started very early for me, and I think it was largely because I could never find the box that I fitted into. I was a little bit of a hippie, but I also quite liked designer shoes and handbags.
Yeah.
I liked to party and go out and have fun, but I didn't want to do it for days on end, and I didn't really know where my place was. And I think when I found psychology and then married it with mindfulness, it allows me to sit across those two worlds: the science of psychology, the evidence-based, the research, and then the more esoteric kind of less structured world of meditation. So I think that's why my personality's been drawn to this career path. And I guess on a deeper level, I studied psychology because I grew up with a very unwell dad. My dad has bipolar disorder, which in the olden days used to be known as manic depression. Needless to say, I had a very colourful childhood. There was lots of activity. There were also quite a lot of dark moments as well, as you can imagine, that came with the depression. And then I had a mum who was also unwell, but she was physically unwell. And she passed away 10 years ago now, but she also experienced quite a high degree of anxiety, which I now know may have led to a lot of the physical complications she had. So I grew up in a space where there was a lot of stress, there was a lot of fear, there was joy and love and lots of fun as well. But I think I really studied psychology in an effort to heal my dad. And then, the reason I've committed myself to teaching this work for the last 15 years is because when I discovered mindfulness, my whole world changed. For the first time, I got to know me. I got to realize who is underneath the anxious thoughts, the perfectionistic tendencies, the people-pleasing behaviors. And I got to discover, and I'm still discovering, I mean, this is the cool thing about this work, is that it's the work of a lifetime. But I got to discover who's really there, which has allowed me to show up in a much more authentic and purposeful and satisfying way in my life.
Yeah, how amazing. Because a lot of us, search for years and years to try and uncover who we are. And through this practice, we can do that.
Absolutely. And everybody's journey is different. And I'm certainly not making any promises. But if we can invite this work into our life, which requires us to spend nothing, to believe nothing, to follow no one. It's something we can do for ourselves at any time, anywhere. There's no supplements required or particular, outfits required. If we can commit ourselves to inviting this into our life, we will learn whatever it is we need to learn. For all of us, it's going to be different. Some people may not struggle with their stress, so they think, well, I don't need to meditate. Yeah, but you may have an anger situation, or maybe your relationships aren't as helpful as they could be. And mindfulness gives us whatever we need to allow ourselves to show up with our full humanity.
Yeah. Amazing. So how do you incorporate this into your daily life, especially during tough times or challenges that come along the way?
Yeah, beautiful. So I think that a really good place to start is to look at what mindfulness actually is, because there's a lot of misunderstanding out there. Mindfulness, as defined by Jon Kabat-Zinn, who would be considered the grandfather of modern mindfulness, Ellen Langer's the grandmother. So we've got the boys and girls both represented. His definition is mindfulness is the awareness that arises when we pay attention to the present moment in a particular way. So mindfulness is more than just paying attention. It's more than just attending to what's happening. It's attending to what's happening in a way that is curious, kind, open, accepting. If all we do is pay attention and we don't include the loving and the gentle approach, we could send ourselves crazy. And if you think about it, if mindfulness is just paying attention, that's the job of a sniper or someone or a hacker. Mindfulness is very much infused with the virtues or the mindsets or the attitudes. And a lot of the way that mindfulness is taught these days neglects that whole lineage. This work is thousands of years old. And that other part to this work's really important. So that's mindfulness.
That's amazing, because I have heard so many times about the pay attention, but I've never heard it I've heard curious, yes, I've heard be curious, but I haven't heard kind, open, and accepting.
Oh, Beck, and that's the secret sauce. There's 10 of them that we need to work with, which I won't go through all of them now, but we talk about it as the second wing. So the first wing of mindfulness is attention. Absolutely. Attention management is super important. And we are working in an attention economy these days. We have got things pulling at our attention at all times. And so attention is super important. But the second wing is kindness and softness and care and gentleness and gratitude and curiosity and acceptance and all of these rich teachings that allow this attention to be rewarding and to allow us to actually unfold into our full potential rather than just, attending.
Yes.
So that's mindfulness as distinct from meditation. And meditation is the formal practice. And there's thousands of different types of meditation. Mindfulness meditation is just one of them. And so the way I talk about these two different concepts is there's informal mindfulness, which is the way we choose to live, which is why I fell in love with this technique, because it doesn't require me to meditate, and an example of informal mindfulness, and you asked how I bring it into my life, as often as possible, I try to allow my mind to be where my body is. I bring the mind and the body together. Now, the research tells us that in this modern world, 47% of the time, our mind and our body are disconnected. Same research also tells us that when our mind and body are disconnected, we're less likely to be happy. So the onus is on us as humans to cultivate this capacity to bring presence into our lives. And so I support myself to be where I am. When I'm washing the dishes, sure, sometimes I'm daydreaming or planning or organizing, but these days I'm usually aware that I'm doing it. And then I bring my mind back and I might feel the warmth of the water or, the movement of my hands. When I go for a walk, sometimes I listen to podcasts, sometimes I'm with a friend, but sometimes I just walk. I feel my feet on the ground. I give myself that opportunity to find that island of sanity that we connected with just then in our formal practice, many moments in my daily life. You know, one of the best things for us to do is to choose one thing we do every day habitually. So whether that's making our breakfast, having a shower, tying up our shoelaces, and commit ourselves to bringing all of our attention to that one task. And when we notice the mind wander, which it will, because we're human and there's nothing wrong with that, that's fine. But we can strengthen this capacity to bring our attention back over and over again. And what we're doing when we do that is we're actually changing the networks of the brain. We're moving out of the default mode network, which is the home of anxiety and depression, rumination, worrying, selfing, where we get stuck in all the stories about us. We become the center of the universe. And we shift that into the active mode network, which is the network in the brain that is responsible for creativity, compassion, connection, the higher order thinking. And so my invitation to you and to your crew is to choose one thing every day. Just start small, have a mindful shower, have mindful breakfast, drink your cup of tea with presence, and then start to notice what unfolds. And then remembering to bring in real kindness, because what most of us start to discover, and I certainly did, is we start to discover how wacky our minds are, how busy they are, and how self-absorbed we are, and how we're, you know, planning or worrying or ruminating and regretting. And so we need to bring in real kindness and go, oh my gosh, I'm doing it again. I'm so funny.
Yeah. And was there a moment in your career or life when, you know, mindfulness really, like there was a profound defining moment and you went, oh, this is
I get it.
I get it.
Yeah. So there's been thousands. We could spend the whole week talking about, you know, what's changed for me. But I'm going to give you three. So the first one, I learned a particular model from Craig Hassad at Monash University. And this model is called the train metaphor. And it basically explains for us how we can bring ourselves back to the present moment and the benefits that has. So in order to bring ourselves to the present moment, we have three access points. And we explored two of the three. Oh no, we explored three of them in the little meditation we did earlier. They are our body. Our body's always here in the present moment. Our breath, again, always happening, thankfully. And our senses. What can we feel? What's happening with our skin? They are always available. They bring us back to the now. So I'd like you to imagine, Beck, that you are standing on a train platform, and it's one of those center platforms like at Southern Cross Station. There's trains heading in both directions. And the now represents the present moment. Here we are. And you come to the present moment through the body, the breath, and the senses. When our mind is not in the present moment, where is it? What are we thinking about?
For me, it's often the future or what's happening next or what I have to do or whatever, anything that's future focused.
Me too. So that's the future train. That's one of the trains that we jump on mindlessly, and we find ourselves on that train. And before we know it, if we spend too long on that train, we end up in stressed out land.
Yeah.
The reverse is also true. So if we spend too long on the past train, which is the other train on the other side of the platform, regretting, ruminating, feeling angry, guilt, shame, self-loathing, should have done that, could have done that. Before we know it, we find ourselves in bummed out land. We're just there and we're exhausted. And I won't go into the physiology of these two states, but they're very much opposite sides of the nervous system. And so what mindfulness helps us to do is stand in the center platform and become discerning travelers. We can choose when we jump on the future train, because of course we need to jump on the future train. I needed to plan this session. Of course I need to plan who's picking up my kid today. And of course we need to reflect on the past and learn from our mistakes. But we can do it with awareness. We can do it mindfully with presence. So my question for you, Beck, is what would happen? What would the authorities do if passengers stopped taking the trains, if they just stayed on the centre platform? What would the authorities do?
I don't know they'd be able to do anything. I mean, we'd just be stuck there. We would all be connected in the middle somewhere.
Yeah. Would they keep running the trains if there was no business? No one was buying
No,
tickets?
no, of
And
course
the
not.
same thing happens in our brain. This is the beauty of neuroplasticity. Whatever we practice grows stronger. The more we worry, the more we jump on that future train, the stronger those neural pathways become.
Yes.
Oh, full body goosebumps.
Oh, I'm getting goosebumps as well.
And so we have a choice. And this is why this tool is the most empowering tool I've come across in a 25-year career and a 50-year life of being a human, that we can actually change the structure and therefore the function of our brain. So we have the neuroscience that now supports the efficacy of this technique. It's super exciting. It's not new. It's 2,500 years old, but the science is just catching up.
Yes.
So that was when I heard that model, everything changed for me. I thought, oh my gosh, I've got a choice. I've got a choice. I don't have to keep being beholden to this mind that just is constantly thinking about the future.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first profound moment. The second moment was when I was in the middle of doing a mindfulness course, training to bring mindfulness into my therapy practice. And I started just paying attention to what I was doing. And I remember very vividly one day I was chopping carrots on a wooden chopping board, and I was just chopping the carrots. And then I had the vision, get ready, this is a bit gory. I had the vision of chopping off all my fingers and blood just spurting across the whole board. I, for the first time in my life, realized what had been going on in my mind for most of my life. And I was horrified. But what mindfulness gives us is the capacity to see clearly. And that's where we need to bring in the kindness and the compassion. I vividly remember standing in the kitchen, having this vision of the blood across the chopping board and going, wow, that's how I've lived my entire life. Cranked up, worrying, thinking about the next possible thing that could go wrong. Not my fault. It's a result of my DNA, my family heritage, my early childhood experiences, but it is absolutely my responsibility to rein this mind in. And then I can give you thousands of examples of, just images that have flicked across my mind of what could go wrong. I mean, it still happens. I just don't take it seriously anymore. It doesn't impact me anymore. Whereas I think for years it flicked my nervous system into an overactive state. So that was another one.
Amazing. I mean, that is what it is. Your nervous system is going into overdrive. And I know when I get anxious about something or future focus too much about planning or strategy or whatever it might be, there's a physical response to that.
Yeah.
And it's not very nice.
No. And we know that the mind-body connection is alive and real. Our thoughts create everything. And we can create different physiological states based on our thinking. And over time, what happens is if we spend, as I have, so much of our life in this fight-flight mode, this sympathetic dominance state, which a lot of us are in these days because of the pace of the modern world and technology, what eventually happens is parts of our body start to break down. We experience a thing called allostatic load, which is the stress in the body just gets too much. And that happened to me. 15 years ago, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And I have no doubt that's because the first 35 years of my life, I had spent stressing, being anxious, being on high alert for good reason. I grew up in a very stressful family environment, very loving, but very stressful. And so, the invitation is pay attention to your thinking, really choose which thoughts to feed. We might not be able to choose which thoughts to have, but we can certainly choose which thoughts to feed.
Yeah, absolutely. So for all of us on the call and those that are going to watch the replay, how can this practice help us navigate our emotions or habits that are tied directly to alcohol use?
Great question. There was a third example, but I'll leave that for later on. I'll tell that story later on. It's another profound moment. So how can we use it? The first thing is by coming to our body. So as we saw in our brief meditation practice, mindfulness meditation is very much an embodied experience. And craving starts in the body. It rarely starts in the mind, and then it goes to the mind, and then we act, we behave, we choose what to do with our hand, reach out for that glass of wine or that chocolate brownie or whatever it is. And so the first thing to do is tune into the body. Where's this craving starting? Is it starting here? Is it starting here? Is it starting here? And what was I thinking or believing before that craving started? Was it stress, anxiety, fear, sadness, loneliness? Usually it's fear or some derivative of fear. Fear of not being good enough, not fitting in, not being able to perform, whatever it is. And then we bring great compassion and great kindness to ourselves. We say, yeah, you're human. You're having a human experience. And then we tune into our values. Who do I want to be in this moment? Do I want to be at the whim of my anxieties and my craving? Or do I want to make a more mindful, conscious, values-driven choice? So it can be helpful for people to get really clear on their values. Who do they want to be? Why are you doing this course? What's the reason that you're wanting to reduce alcohol? What impact is it having on you? Because it's those moments that we need something bigger than willpower. Willpower is not enough in my experience.
No, it's definitely not.
So it's tuning to the body, noticing the thinking, determining what's actually happening, and then coming to our values and making a values-driven response rather than a mindless, automatic, habitual response.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that aligns to the 100-day program, because it is about physiology first, then the mind. So your practice, your teachings aligns perfectly to that. And starting off with, who do we want to be? You know, because if we don't have the clarity in the present to understand what we want our future to look like, who are we really, who do we want to be as an authentic being, then it's very difficult to actually, you know, make an accepted and informed decision about moving forward.
Yeah, we need something to ground us.
Yeah.
And our values ground us. Our values are our anchor. They're our compass. They help us say, okay, where do I want to go? What's the next right thing? One of my favorite practical tools actually is called the STOP technique. You might have heard of it before. And it's from dialectical behavioral therapy, which is a mindfulness-based therapy developed by Marsha Linehan. And STOP is an acronym. And in it, S stands for stop. That's an easy one to remember. T stands for take a breath. One long, slow breath, just resetting the nervous system. O stands for open and observe. What is actually happening? What is happening right now? What is really happening? And P stands for proceed in line with your values. Do the next right thing. So when we feel like we want to reach for a drink, or in my case, a chocolate brownie, we can do the STOP technique. It's a brilliant circuit breaker. It's incredibly powerful to help us reset and remember who we want to be and live consciously.
Absolutely. So let's just do that one again. Stop, literally stop.
Stop. T stands for take a breath, one long breath. It's very important for the out breath to be longer than the in breath. In that way, we reset the nervous system. Most of us, when we're stressed, we're taught to take deep breaths. That just makes us more stressed. It's actually take long, slow out breaths. So T, take a breath. O is observe what is happening. Open and observe what is really going on. Is there a tiger fighting us, chasing us? Probably not. It's probably a stressful email. And then P, proceed in line with our values. Who do we want to be? How do we want to show up? Yeah, one of my favorite teaching stories actually of that particular technique is when I was working for Smiling Mind, which is a great free mindfulness app. Everybody out there, they're Australian, not-for-profit. Awesome, awesome, awesome app. And I got a call or a text message from the PR girl saying, Liv, I've booked you for an interview with Grubby and DD on the radio at 10 a.m. next Sunday. Can you do it? And I was in the Coles car park at the time. And of course, I went straight into imposter syndrome. Oh my gosh, I can't do it. I couldn't be on live radio. How terrifying. And I thought, right, what tools do I have? The STOP technique. Okay, put down my bags, my shopping bags. Stop. Take a breath. Long, slow breath. Open and observe what is actually happening, Liv. Right now, you're standing in the Coles car park. You're not on live radio. P, proceed in line with your values. One of my values is making a difference, is changing, is being of service, changing the world, being of service. Proceed in line with your values. So at that point, I was able to text back and say, I would absolutely love to do it. Thank you so much. And yes, I still felt anxious, but only for 20 minutes, as opposed to letting it play over and over and over in our head. You know, it only takes 20 minutes for an emotion to move through the body, except we just keep feeding it, you know, with our thoughts. So yeah, it's a good circuit breaker.
That's amazing. Yes. And 20 minutes, knowing that this too shall pass.
This too shall pass.
20 minutes. If we don't feed it, we don't want to feed the.
Don't feed it. Yeah. And, you know, that's another mindfulness technique called urge surfing. Just surf the urge. Know that it will change. Know that something else will happen in 20 minutes. You know, I love the what's her name? Sylvia Bornstein quote, which is, nothing is a big deal. It is whatever it is, and then it's something else.
Yeah, amazing.
Reminds us of the impermanence.
Yes, I should have realized that, because I did, but I only had it related specifically to panic attacks. I used to have panic attacks, and then I discovered, okay, they only last 15 minutes. I don't need to call an ambulance, but it's not funny in the moment, but you know, I'm not going to die. Go and sit down outside, get some cold. You just sit on the grass and just let it move through your body, literally.
Move through your body.
It does. It does.
Yeah, it does. It's a release of stress. And, you know, there's lots of great things you can do. I'm sure that you've experienced them, Becca, with when it comes to panic. You know, there's cold press on the back of the neck, the physiological sigh, which is my favorite breath technique.
My favorite. It works instantly.
Instantly. Should we share it? Or should we keep it a secret? No, let's share it.
No, let's share it.
So the physiological sigh, everybody, is a wonderful technique I learned on the podcast with Andrew Huberman. The Huberman Lab podcast, really great podcast, long form media. If you have to have time to listen to it, really great podcast. And he did a research project in his lab where he looked at the different breath techniques. And I'd always been teaching the box breath to my clients, but they actually compared the efficacy of the box breath to the physiological sigh. And they found that the physiological sigh is much more effective in settling the nervous system. And basically, it's 2 breaths in through the nose and 1 long, slow breath out through the mouth. So it's like this. And I guarantee if you do that 3 times, you will have an immediate nervous system reset. That's not to say that we should be blanketing over our stress response, because that's what if we only do breath work, we can sometimes just trap the stress response in the body. However, sometimes that breath work is a completely appropriate response, but that's where our mindfulness comes in. We need to be discerning. You know, a healthy nervous system isn't a nervous system that's relaxed all the time. A healthy nervous system is a nervous system that responds to the ebb and flow of life. You know, before I do a workshop or a presentation, it's completely appropriate that I'm a bit cranked up. I need to be a bit sympathetic side nervous system, because then I can think clearly, I remember things, I've got more energy. Whereas when I'm going to bed at night, I don't want to be in a sympathetic state, I want to be in a parasympathetic state. So yeah, that's a really important thing to remember, I think. We're not just wanting to be relaxed and calm at all times, because that can not only trap the stress in our body, but it's actually not a healthy way to live, because it's not attending to what's happening in our world.
That's it. And then your emotions are stuck inside.
Correct.
But on the physiological side, you know, in a panic moment, the parasympathetic, you know, is going off, and it does have the science. It slows your heart rate. If you do it 3 to 5 times, and I've used it before in a panic state, it literally does slow your heart rate. I've timed it on my Ring and on my phone, and it's like it's working.
It's just another magic hack. All this stuff should be taught in schools. Anyway,
I'm mindful of the time. I do want to open up to questions in a couple of minutes before the hour. So let's. Are there any misconceptions or common misconceptions about mindfulness that you've experienced that perhaps, you know, people are thinking?
So many. So one of them is that mindfulness meditation is meant to make us feel calm. That's not true. Mindfulness meditation is a tool to help us wake up and be who we are. And what we often find when we first sit down to practice is that we are a bundle of energy. And what can happen for many people is they think, well, meditation doesn't work for me, I can't meditate. I did that for 15 years and I deeply regret it. Not that I'm beating myself up about it, but I wish I'd come to meditation sooner. And so what happens is the peace and the calm appear all by itself. We can't just sit down and expect to be relaxed, but if we sit down and observe everything and see the bumbling and the bumbling of the chest and the churning of the tummy, we find the calmness and the peace underneath that. Mm-hmm. The other misconception is that mindfulness and meditation are the same thing. I want to be really clear, they're very different, they're related. Mindfulness is a way of seeing and a way of being, a way of showing up to all of our moments, our relationships, ourselves, our work, our kids. Meditation is the formal practice that cultivates that skill. But in order to live a mindful life, we don't have to meditate. I would strongly encourage you to, but if that feels like too much of a stretch, you can still be mindful, still practice mindfulness by showing up and being present, mindfully listening, paying attention to what's happening in your body. So they're different, related, but different. And the final misconception, I think, is that we need to believe something. We need to follow a leader or, pay lots of money, or we don't need to do that for a mindful life. We learn to get to know ourselves. We learn to listen to our own voice and our own intuition. And that's why I think it's the most empowering tool that we have.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Thank you. Before I open up to questions, is there something that I haven't asked you, or is there something that you want to share and make sure that's communicated to the group?
Yes, there's one final thing before we go for questions. And that is, I guess, the key learning and the gift for me that meditation, mindfulness meditation specifically, has given me is a deep and enduring connection to myself. Mm. And I think from my research as a psychologist and my experience as a human, in order for us to be well, that is the best place to start. And so 10 years ago, I went through a period of pretty epic burnout. Luckily for me, 5 years before that, I'd started meditating. So that was when I was 40. 15 years earlier, I'd had a similar experience of burnout, but this time it was also tinged with depression. This is at the age of 23. There was also self-loathing thoughts of hopelessness, but the physiological experience of depression as well, which is tiredness and exhaustion. And then when I burnt out the second time, which was 10 years ago, I had still the physical exhaustion. I was super tired, but there was no depression symptoms. So there was no self-loathing. There was a gentle, kind, loving attention. And that was what prompted me to write this book.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I love it. It is truly, and especially for children now, before they, as they're growing up and they're faced with so much more than we had.
So much more. And if our kids and ourselves can know that love is always loving us, which is a quote from Tara Brach, that love is always there, that we are always connected to self, to the world, to other, we can actually face any adversity. Yeah. This is my hope for this work, that it can be reframed from being a cure-all to to fix our anxiety or fix our depression or fix our cancer or whatever it is. And it may well do that for some people. But for the large majority of us, what it does is it helps us to manage life with more elegance, more grace, more kindness. And it's just something I hope that everybody can have access to, because it's such a resource.
It's amazing, amazing tool. And you are certainly the expert. In fact, I remember when you came back from America and first dropped the word that I'd never even heard of it.
No one had.
10 or 20 years ago. And I was, what is she talking about?
I know. No one had. That was a fascinating thing. When I was in America, that's when it all became really quite big. I was talking to my American friends about it, and they were all saying, yeah, you should definitely, start teaching this work. And whereas all my Aussie friends are like, don't be crazy, Liv. No one's going to want to learn to meditate. That all sounds like the hippie stuff you've been playing with for so many years. Anyway, we got there, so it's good.
Up there, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Before we conclude and I share your details with everyone, well, let's open the floor to any questions. Feel free to type them in the chat and I can read them to Liv. You don't have to speak up. You're welcome to type them in the chat. And let me just think. I did have, if there's, wait for
While we're waiting for people's questions, maybe I will jump in and just answer some questions that people ask usually.
yes.
And one of them is, how do I stop my mind from wandering? And my answer to that is, you don't. It will happen. You accept it, and you realize that there's a part of you that can watch it, that can observe it. And through this act, the wandering starts to slow down.
Yeah.
Through this act, we start to get to know that we are not our thoughts. We are something greater and more expansive and more powerful and more connected than our thinking.
Yeah.
And so please don't sit down to practice with the goal of clearing your mind. That may or may not happen. With time, it eventually happens. Believe me, I've got to experience the beauty of that. But sit down with the curiosity of watching your mind, of being like, what is going on in here? And then befriending it.
Amazing. Our first question, Liv, is do you meditate at the same time each day or ad hoc, or is there an optimal time to meditate during the day?
Great question. So when I asked this question of one of my early teachers, her answer, which I think was brilliant, is meditate at the time you will do it. So yes, I meditate most days, not every day, but most days in the morning, first thing. Sometimes if it's a particularly chaotic morning and the kids are arcing up and I wait till everybody goes to school if work allows that. And if I don't do it in the morning, it will happen at some point during the day. One of the benefits of being a psychologist who does meditation in sessions and a meditation teacher is I get to meditate with my clients. It's an added bonus. But the invitation, I would suggest when you're first starting out, choose a time. Choose 7:15. Do it for 5 minutes. Don't start with 20. Start with, or even 2 minutes. If you've come across the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, he's got the 2-minute rule. Make it realistic. Start with 2 minutes and just set a timer on your phone and just sit down and feel your breath. Just notice your breath. And if the breath does not feel available, because it can be challenging for some of us, just feel your feet on the floor and just notice the mind will wander, bring it back. It'll wander, bring it back. And eventually you'll be able to extend it. And then you'll get to a point where you'll just love it so much you won't want it to stop.
Amazing. Yes, absolutely. And so many amazing resources and techniques have come out of this. My mind, I've been writing just little things down along the way, and I'm like blown away. Sorry, I got distracted then.
Okay, we're all distracted. It's the nature of the world we're living in, Beth. It's all good.
So I would like to know, while we're waiting for some questions, do you have any really cool resources like books or podcasts? What are your top recommendations?
What are my go-tos? So on my website, which is Liv Mindfully, so it's LIV mindfully.com, so no E. I've got a whole resources page. And I've got my favorite books and podcasts there. I've also got a podcast. The podcast is called You Are Loved. I started it during COVID in an effort to start to promote the book. The good news is I've just had a new shipment of books. So if anyone's interested in a signed copy, I'd be more than happy to help you with that. Or you can get it from, Big W or Target or your local bookstore. But John Kabat-Zinn would be one of my favorite teachers. He makes the teachings incredibly accessible. He's the founder of the MBSR, which is the 8-week program, mindfulness-based stress reduction. And a lot of the research we see when it comes to the area of mindfulness is from that particular program. It's very evidence-based. It's been integrated into a lot of healthcare settings, workplaces, and the education system as well, which is super exciting. But yeah, it's all on my website.
Fantastic.
Yes, Narelle, it's livemindfully.com. You're spot on.
Perfect. And So how can we contact you? Your website, Live
My
Mindful.
website. I am on social media, although I'm not great on social media. I find it's not great for my nervous system being on it too much. So I saw somebody sent me a direct message and it had been there for 2 months and I hadn't responded. So website's best. Otherwise, email, which is olivia@livemindfully.com. And I am taking new clients at the moment. So counseling clients. I have just picked up an additional day a week at the clinic. I work out of Albert Park and I'm specializing in working with women because it's just the area that I've loved throughout my whole life. I really love supporting women to wake up, be present, get to know themselves, get to love themselves.
Fantastic. That's amazing. And I will make sure that all of this is available in our community as well, and that people have a copy of the recording if they want to listen to it again for any of the, session parts that particularly resonated, and also all of the information that you've just provided. And I'm mindful, we've got 5 minutes left.
Well, before we go, I have a poem I would love to share with everybody. And what I'll invite you to do just at the end of this session is just settle in once again, just kind of let your body land, let it be grounded. You're welcome to let the eyes close if you're comfortable to, or they can remain open. You might start just by feeling the pressure of the body on the floor or the chair, the bed. Noticing the length of the back. Noticing the way the shoulders are positioned. Can they soften just a little? And then without changing or fixing anything, just once again, noticing this miraculous breath. It happens all by itself. And then just letting go of the breath and just taking a moment to look upon yourself the way you might look upon somebody that you love. A child, a grandparent, a coach, a dear friend, a pet. Just looking upon yourself as a beautifully imperfect human, doing their best, doing this course to empower themselves, to show up for themselves, for their family. And can you offer, perhaps for the first time for some of us, can you offer this person compassion, kindness, care? This person with all of their experiences, their stories, their neuroses, their skills, their weaknesses, this whole person sitting here. Can you offer them some care, some love? And for some of us, this can be tricky, and that's okay. But in my experience as a human and as a professional, if we really want to heal and grow and change and have this healing sustainable, it has to come from a place of love, of care, of worthiness, as opposed to scarcity and self-loathing. So the invitation is just to lovingly complete this course. Lovingly show up for yourself. Be your own best friend. And as we close, I'd love to share with you my very favorite poem. It's called Love After Love, and it's by Derek Walcott. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself, arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself. to the stranger who has loved you all your life for whom you've ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Heal your own image from the mirror and sit and feast on your life. Just letting those words ripple through the body, through the heart, opening the heart. Because this is the true gift of mindfulness. Yes, it can help us to manage our mind. Yes, it can help us to focus more effectively and be more productive. And it can absolutely help us show up to relationships. But ultimately, it helps us befriend ourselves. So we are never, ever alone. And then just once again, noticing the breath. Maybe with a gentle hand on your heart, which has the impact of toning the nervous system. Just letting the eyes blink open.
Wow. Beautiful. Honestly.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Everybody on this call, I know when I speak, will have thoroughly enjoyed that. Absolutely. There's comments coming through now. Thank you. Thank you. Love the session. Beautiful time together. Thanks, Beck and Liv. So thank you, Liv.
Pleasure.
And we're very, very grateful for all of this. And I've recorded the session and we'll send you a copy as well so that you have it. And until we meet next time, truly grateful because you are the inspiration that and your metaphors as well and your stories. I love the train stories. You just resonate. So definitely an amazing hour session. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Beck. Thanks for inviting me. All the best, everybody. I'm doing the alcohol-free challenge as well, so go us.
Go us. Let me just press stop recording.